Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, building experiences that connect, remove friction, and deliver insights. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Scott Lasseigne. Scott is the Vice President of Sales for APS. He has been with APS for 15 years, working in territory sales, inside sales, as well as the inside sales team manager. Scott has consistently been one of the top salespeople during his time at APS and is a PACE Award recipient. He also played a crucial role in the evolution of APS's sales strategy surrounding the technology of their platform. Scott graduated from Louisiana State University with a bachelor's in HR management. Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, Scott Lasseigne.
Hey, Ed, thanks for having me.
Well, first off, Scott, why do you do what you do?
It's interesting. APS is a very special company. So like you just mentioned, I've been with APS for 15 years. And when I started, I was employee 15. In tech sales and SaaS sales, really, it's not very common to hang around for 2 or 3 or 4 years. But I realized very early on that APS is a very special company and why we do what we do. So I realized very early on that this is a company that cared about user adoption, cared about the client experience, and really didn't put a ceiling on me. So it really aligned with my morals, my values. And I've been with APS ever since.
And I'd like to ask you, tell me a little bit about the conflicting priorities when you're trying to create an ideal tech stack.
Yeah. You know, in our space, in a payroll and HCM world, there is finance data, there's demographic data, there's HR data, and really systems like ours are trying to govern them all. And typically, especially pre-COVID, finance and HR had very conflicting priorities. If you look at it from the finance and payroll perspective, it's very analytic-centric, budget-focused controls, and there are certain systems built to manage those priorities very well. And then you've got HR that cares about the entire employee lifecycle. They care about performance management, org charting, succession planning, trying to build out the company from an HR perspective. And in our space, that there are companies or software that can manage payroll and finance very well, and there are companies and organizations that can manage HR very well. But there aren't that many options that marry them all together and allow finance and HR to have their priorities met, and for both parties to be very satisfied with the software offering. So it can create challenge in our space.
It's really what I find with your systems and others is it's all about the fact that we want to make sure that the systems are serving the people and not the people serving the systems. And I think that one of the things that gets knocked around is if something is strong in HR, it's going to be weak in ERP or accounting because you end up serving that system as opposed to the one that it was originally designed for. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it goes back to APS being a special organization, and we've historically grown through proprietary software, meaning we've built our platform ourselves using our client base as really drivers. We listen to our clients and we build out the technology to fit their needs. And you know, the world changed in 2020, and really it forced really the SMB market. And from my perspective, the SMB market is the lifeblood of our economy. It forced companies in that space, it forced finance to care about HR concerns and HR to care about finance concerns. So what I mean by that is now HR is trying to be looked at as a revenue generating department. How can they affect direct and indirect costs? And finance is looking at the cost of turnover, which has historically been an HR analytic or metric. So we have fortunately been in a space where we started off as a payroll company, but quickly started building out HR very methodically. And so now we go to market and HR and finance come at this evaluation collaboratively, now with the same now with overlapping priorities. And they can see options like APS and others that are really looking to appease both parties. And so that one stakeholder maybe doesn't have more pull than the other. They can be collaborative in evaluating software, and they can be collaborative in using it, and they're empathetic more towards the other party's perspective.
And you mentioned the world change in 2020. We all agree with that. Is there anything that you guys had to specifically change about either your system or just the way that you guys did business as a result of what happened with COVID?
We have never seen anything like the pandemic. And as you probably remember, there was the CARES Act, FFCRA, the ERC, a lot of governmental either regulations or incentives or credits that really forced us as a company to make sure our software could produce those returns, file those credits, give our users the information that they needed to ascertain the credits or stay in compliance. But there wasn't a negative impact. Again, I mentioned that our system's proprietary, so we didn't have to go outsource dev to get some of the FFCRA regulations off the ground. We were able to handle all that in-house, and it forced us to make sure that we were appeasing the stakeholders from the finance and HR perspective, because even though the regulations were really payroll focused, HR buyers were wanting to really understand how they could at the same time manage turnover, lower attrition, and develop their staff in a more remote world. So prior to COVID, several decentralized businesses, but as you know now, Ed, I could live in Seattle and work for a Louisiana-based business. The employee demographic is growing, and companies are having to manage a more decentralized workforce. How do they do that effectively? What systems do they have in place? How do they monitor performance? And so it pushed us, but it pushed us very positively.
And Scott, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours, and why are they a hero?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a hero, but I have some that I look up to and admire. And one of the first question you asked me is why you do what you do. And Simon Sinek is very important to me. And if you know a lot about Simon Sinek from his famous TED Talk, The Start With Why, businesses buy why you do something. They don't buy what you do or how you do it. That resonates with me because of the special story APS has. But also since the pandemic, he really talked about how trust is built within successful organizations, and then really his infinite mindset. And that's had a significant impact on me, especially in sales. We can sometimes be too deadline focused. How did our quarter land? How did our year land? But Simon's really opened me up to this more infinite mindset perspective that it helps me be more optimistic and sales, which can historically be kind of a crazy world.
And lastly, Scott, how can somebody contact you?
Yeah, so my email address, that's Lasseigne, SLASSEIGNE @APSpayroll.com. Also, if you go to APSpayroll.com and just click contact us, I can be reached directly from there.
And we also have a special offer that we're putting in the show notes, which is linked below. Scott Lasseigne, Vice President of Sales for APS, thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.
Thanks a lot, Ed.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.